Okay, wonderful. Happy Lantern Festival, everyone. Welcome to this very special webinar of UCET's Asian American Author Series. UCET is an American NGO based in Washington, D.C., promoting US-China relations through education and exchange. Today, we celebrate the last day of the Lunar New Year, which honors heritage, resilience, and belonging, the themes of Fae Myenne Ng's new book, Orphan Bachelors. We are delighted to host this conversation with Faye, the best-selling and award-winning author of Foam and Steering Port Rock, and King-Kok Cheung, the acclaimed literary critic and professor emeritus of English and Asian American Studies at UCLA. Before I hand over the floor to these two very inspiring women, I wanted to let you know that you can post your chats to the chat box and post your questions to the chat box. And we will reserve the last 20 minutes of this conversation to answer your questions. King-Kok and Faye, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I'll start because I'm as Bye as Faye. Happy 元宵节 Lantern Festival to everyone. 元宵节快乐. We deliberately choose this day because we love, these are days when lovers meet. So Faye and I, hardly get to see each other. So this is a wonderful day for the two of us to meet. I already wrote a very detailed review of Orphan Bachelors, so I won't repeat anything I have written, but I want to just first talk about the very interesting connection between Faye, me, Shelley Fisher-Fishkin, who is currently, and I, along with 4 editors, are doing a volume called Canto IE. And that volume is really inspired by Fae Myenne Ng's Orphan Bachelors. So what happened was that I was invited to be, I forgot my title, but some kind of consultant by USCET, by Julia Chang Block, Ambassador Julia Chang Block. And then we have tried to get together for a meal at some point. And then she said at one point that, oh, maybe my good friend Shelley Fisher-Fishkin can also join us. And I said, oh, I really love to meet Shelley Fisher-Fishkin in person for many reasons, which you probably all know her. But then I was really honored when Professor Yuan Shu at Texas Tech invited both Shelley Fisher-Fishkin and I to the special conference commemorating Shelley Fishkin, maybe 20th anniversary of her very important article called Why Should American Studies Be Transnational? So during that conference, I gave a paper on Orphan Bachelors. And after I was done, I also play a clip of Ballad of Mulan. After I was done, Shirley asked me, King-Kok, why don't you do a volume on Cantonese American culture? And my immediately answer say, no, I'm retired. I don't want to edit another book. But then 6 hours later, when we are having dinner in a steakhouse in Texas, I say, Shirley, if you can find someone much younger who would co-edit with me, and if you will join me as the editor, I'll do it. And then she said yes. So we are now co-editing this huge book that Faye is contributing, Maxine Hong Kingston, Russell Leong, Marilyn Chin, they're all contributing. So a very exciting project. But so I want to say today that, and I just told Faye, we didn't have a time to do any rehearsal or even plan to ask whatever questions because, as you know, LA was burning. And then Trump was elected. So all these very discombobulated events, it's only 2 days ago that I confirmed with, are we doing a webinar today? So that's why you didn't get any notice from me earlier. So to be quick, I've always admired Faye's work, always find her writing is marvelous. But I always tell my best friend, Russell Leong, I say, I really wish that I have a chapter on Fae Myenne Ng in my second monograph called Chinese American Literature Without Borders. But somehow I couldn't quite get an angle. Her stuff is so elusive in some ways that I just don't know, how to approach it. And then Orphan Bachelors come along. And I just told Faye that even though I loved the first two books, this book just bang, it's like it really all of a sudden make me feel, wow, she is my Zhiying, she is my Jiyam, and then we are both Babai sisters. And then, so my recognition is that this book, unlike the first two, is much stronger on her reclaiming of what she called Canto culture, Cantonese culture, or Toisanese culture, which is also the culture of the early immigrants. 90%, if not 99% of them are from Guangzhou, okay? So that to me really clicked because I love my Cantonese language. But the second thing is the allusions to Chinese literature, because I always tell Marilyn Chin, I say the reason I love to write about your work because you use so many different ethnic groups, and I have a very brilliant PKU student who is writing on how her work is affected by African American culture. And then my bailiwick is Chinese culture. So I just love to talk about her Song of the Set Guitar and Pei Pa Hang or Pi Pa Xing. So I thought that is what I have an angle. But Faye, in her first two books, hardly used Chinese literature. Okay. But in this book, wow, all of a sudden it's Ballad of Mulan. And then the most moving story, which in some way I feel connects the whole book, is the Sima Qin Sima Tam story. The Shi Tai Gong, Sima Qian, Sima Tan, and the father. Because this book is also about her homage to her parents. So the whole reason why Sima Qian would rather to be castrated rather than die is because she wants to finish a project that the father did not finish. But also, well, I won't go into too much about that story, but the story is all over the place with too much significance. But I'll let Faye talk about it. And thirdly, the third reason why I think this book is very different from the first two is that the first two books, even though there are a lot of autobiographical elements, is still definitely fiction. Whereas this book so masterfully combines creative imagination and fiction. And when I go to China to talk about autobiography, people always spend so much time debating, is it an autobiographical novel or is it autobiography? So a lot of people are upset if I call not a lot of Chinese critics are very upset if, say, The Woman Warrior is classified as autobiography, especially Frank Chin, right? It's fiction, it's a fiction, it's even distort Chinese culture and so forth. But I think The Woman Warrior is wonderful precisely also because it's very imaginative nonfiction, creative and imaginative nonfiction, and there's no conflict. So I that's what I feel this book so brilliantly illustrates, that they do not undermine one another. The autobiography just deepen the, how do you call it, the passion and the feeling, the deep feeling, because she felt it so feelingly, right? But the imagination is throughout the book. How she connects the Sima Qin story with the rest, how she used the Mulan Qi, the Ballad of Mulan, inspire her to even study textile as an undergraduate. And Mulan, the ballad, also happened to be one of my favorites. And so in my class, I'm teaching a class called Learn Through Play. I make the students, require the students to recite, it's a Cantonese class, to recite the first four lines in Cantonese to pass. It's just a pass-fail class. So just to, for most of you know how to recite it. So to go quickly with Cantonese is 唧唧復唧唧，木蘭當戶織， 不聞機處聲，惟聞女嘆息. So I also did the recital of that in the Texas Tech, where I met Shelley Fisher Fishkin, and that's why she said, "Why don't you do a volume?" So that's why I thought the Mulan thing connects the woman warrior, connects the whole thing, and connects what I'm doing right now, the thing. But the way Faye used that story is so powerful because it's like so the power and glory of the Canto culture, I think, is so vivid there. So I'm just going to let Faye take over from here. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much, King-Kok. I think this should be a conversation because we're two writers, we're two Fae daughters, we are two teachers, and there's so much that we have not been able to talk about, but we have pondered, in emails or in passing, because King-Kok brought me down to UCLA. Mona Simpson started me in the English department. You brought me to the Asian American Studies department. I did this crazy thing that only a Cantonese person could do. I taught Monday and Wednesday at Berkeley, and I had the great idea of flying to LA and teaching on Tuesday and then having the rest of the week off. That's only what a crazy Cantonese who wants more time and thinks that by straining herself, she can have more time. I just ended up like so confused. What campus was I on? I was so tired. But this is how I started to get to know King-Kok. We passed each other, going to the airport and so I want to say something. I want to, of course, thank the U.S. China Education Trust for bringing us together. But King-Kok has been such a powerful, dear friend. She's allowed me to explore my Cantonese because I'm a Juk Sing, so my Chinese is very diminished, even though it was my first language. And the poems that I learned, I still have. The barbarian language took over. I had to make a choice at some point in my career to write in English. When I first started writing, half of it was in Chinese, half of it was in English. It was in poor Chinese, but it was in Chinese because I was torn between the languages. And just to jump ahead and say, why did I use Fa Mulan's beautiful poem? Because it was what I heard because I couldn't do math. And this was what sparked my imagination. It's in a chapter, and it's a tribute to my aunt who taught me the poem. And the Sima Tian story is important because it mimics or it parallels the effect of exclusion in this country. So let me just say that the book is many books. It's a book of living history about exclusion and confession and its effects on the Chinese American family. Essentially, 61 years Chinese Americans could not procreate. That's 4 generations of Chinese who were not born. I mean, that's a brilliant piece of legislation because it was bloodless. You didn't have to kill any Chinese. You just made sure no Chinese babies were born. And only a Cantonese could suffer that and still laugh and still say, ha ha. And so when I started teaching and I met the new generation of young people, I thought, exclusion didn't win. Look at these people. They are brilliant. They are so smart. They're so dedicated. They're so devoted to their parents. But yet they want so much to have their own life. They crave the arts, but they're forced into the sciences, business, coding, because, their parents suffered, whatever. But I met them and I realized exclusion did not win. Now, I use Sima Tian's story because his choice of castration is at least a choice. In America, the Chinese orphan bachelors had no choice. They just could not procreate. Not only was there the exclusion law, which was in effect until between 1882 and 1943, and then from 43 until 65, there was a little exclusion where 105 Chinese were allowed into the country. That was not enough. That was my poor math skills, but that's 9 Chinese a month. That was not going to equalize the sexual imbalance. And it didn't until 65 with the Heller-Cart Act, and then as a flood. But the flood allowed the educated class. So what you have and what I try to honor is the working class. And that's the language I want to capture because it's honest, it's desperate, it's poetic, and it is a hold on pre-revolutionary, pre-communist Chinese language. It's what the Chinese escaped China with. It's this ability to imagine you have nothing, but you can tell a story. You have absolutely nothing to eat, but you can talk about what you would eat. So this is the imagination that I try to capture in the language of the book. And those two stories were powerful in my childhood because they opened up my imagination. So that's a long, way of saying what the book is. It's a book of living history. It's a book about exclusion and confession. It's a book about writing. Because when I was working on the book, I realized, how do you write a lie? How do you live a life of a lie and write the truth to make the lie fit, which is what a lot of the orphan bachelors lived. They came over on a lie. My father memorized the book of lies to become another man, a legal American citizen, and he lived that lie. So as his daughter, I made writing my fit. He fit himself in the lie to fit in the country, and I fit myself into writing because that was how I could give him his truth. So, that kind of wordplay is very Cantonese too, because they never want to tell you anything. And this is the effect of a confession. You cannot tell the truth because you'll be deported. That was the effect of the confession program. So what you say about the first two books perhaps being elusive, it's interesting because they were absolute fiction, but they hid the truth. And perhaps in this book, the truth can't hide. But what I believe is that there is a genre in American literature that has not been explored. It's the literature of exclusion. This kind of work, you can't come out and tell the truth. This is my name. This is my name too. And so I try to work between the languages to capture that truth. So that's a very long-winded, and I learned this from the Orphan Bachelors. They tell a long-winded story to,
Okay, I will ask a question.
You have to find your way.
I'll ask a question. Okay. So you talk about the castration, which is such a wonderful symbol, the Sima Qian, the Sima Qian castration story, such a great symbol for orphan bachelors, who, like David Ng also said the same thing, racial castration, you cannot have kids. But I'm very interested in the autobiographical angle. So I was imagined if I am from that generation, especially if I were like your father or your mother, in order to have since it's so wonderful that they got married. So the first thing, and they said that the treasure are their 4 children. And the 4 children, I think, are what kept them together. Otherwise, they would probably have left each other long ago. I think the 4 children kept them together. But for you and also for Marilyn Chen, for Marilyn, I'm not sure whether it's a choice. For you actually said in the book that I don't want to have children. It's in some way my revenge. So that was something that was very puzzling for me because I thought, hey, if I were going to have a revenge for this castration, I would probably do what most Chinese still want today. 百子千孙, okay, you want hundreds of children just to make a revenge so that, we replenish America with Chinese Americans. And the other thing is that it's still such a pressure for women to procreate you from your mother, right? She is giving you all that tonic in order to hope that you will be fertile, right? So then New Year, people still, because this is New Year time, would wish each other, Tim Ding Pa Fa Choi, may you have kids and may you have money, right? Tim Ding Fa Choi. So that is such a prevalent thing including in Cantonese culture. So I just want to say, why is your revenge so peculiar? So in other
Oh,
words, I decided to have a revenge by not procreating.
yes, yes. Now that line in the book, which I will paraphrase because I can't remember it exactly, but the children that the orphan bachelors couldn't have, I decided not to have. And then the last part of that sentence is, I will not buy into this delusional immortality. Very bad paraphrase. Luckily, it's in print somewhere. If somebody wants to read it out, thank you. But that's the stuff of fiction. If you took that last line, delusional immortality, and you gave it to a character who just refuses to have children, it's so anti-Chinese. But I think that it was the perfect kind of stance. Okay, you take this away from us. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to refuse, and I say, I mean, I left it at that, but that's the stuff. If I were to write another novel, that would be the premise of the character that I would explore. It's twisted. Why would you, exactly. A simpleton, a working class person would say, well, I'm going to have my revenge. I'm just going to have as many kids as I can, and I'm going to send them into the world, and I'm just going to like overpopulate them with these kids. But what kind of kids are they going to be? Because they're conceived in this revenge. But so it's a very complex, and this is very Cantonese. You think anybody can revenge like a Canton? This is a very Cantonese passion. Like, okay, how am I going to get back? How am I really going to get back? Right? Because the Cantonese have been stepped on and thrown away and just disrespected so deeply through history that this is what I'm trying to explore. Like, what its generations, its classes of absolute, degradation. What does it do? And it would be simple to say, well, I'm going to just have a lot of kids and, take that. Well, it's a very simple act of revenge.
Now I want to talk about something that you and
you
I
say
seem
this,
to be
your wonderful essay, report
report a crime.
Also, the
Also.
Cantonese are
It's from Kingston, of
geniuses
course.
at
Yeah.
revenge. And I was trying to tap into the depth of that rage. It's what Greta Ehrlich called, the book had hardcore fury, and she really got it. Because the people in this book, the orphan bachelors, are so furious. And this is a way of speaking of the degradation, not only in America. I mean, the language, in that wonderful book, Kingdom of Characters, how close Cantonese was being to becoming the main language,
So I want to go back to segue into what you just said about language, about report a crime.
Mhm.
That is a phrase, maybe misunderstanding, maybe just a very clever invention of Maxine Hong Kingston in The Woman Warrior, in which she translates 报仇, 报仇, as report a crime. And I think that is ingenious because you and I are both word mongers, wordsmiths, word mongers. We love words. And also we realize the power of words. A lot of things we're not supposed to tell today, we just change the word. Like Trump want to do away with whatever it call. I never use that word anyway, DEI, whatever. I say you don't have to use these diversity. You can come up with, so one thing they come up with was like whatever, equal excellence or something like that. But there are different ways. We don't like to use jargon anyway. But to do with the words, when you think you don't want to just procreate literal children, and yet both of us are very dedicated to our students, and we are connected not by blood, but by words. So I just thought about that kind of procreation, to me, is maybe even more important than biological procreation. And I feel that we are very lucky to be humanists, because we would not use words to promote hate, because we look at words from all over the world. We would not use words to promote any prejudice. And then, as I said, both you and I teach at UC, and we have people from all over the world. That's why my allegiance is definitely not to a nation, but to the Bruins and to the Bears and to the Bots, because the Bots are no less important. So going from that to a parallel trajectory between the two of us, the reason why this book is so different from the last two, even though they are brilliantly written, is precisely your really returning to the roots, the root culture, your parents' way of talking, your parents' culture. You are, as opposed to focusing on the younger generation, you really focus on their culture, and also the language, the culture, and the ethos. Because I believe that the Cantonese culture is so different from what the traditional culture is. So just like Kingston was very confused, right? You know, my mother taught me that you don't want to grow up to be a wife and a slave, namely that as a Chinese woman, you're likely to grow up a wife and a slave. But then she taught me the story of the woman warrior. So that kind of contradiction, I think, is very Cantonese. You would always undercut what is the traditional teaching. We do not immediately say, oh no, you want to be a fighter, but then you would teach you these stories that inspire you and then make us want to do that. And then I'm going through a very similar trajectory, in that here I know that I was made an Asian American in the US, and that's why I feel that, hey, if you're a Chinese American, you have to know about the different ethnic cultures in America. So I've spent so much time learning the different Asian group, Burmese, Vietnamese, Filipino, and I have students that has done pioneering work in those groups. And then also Native American, Mexican American, African American especially. But then it's only upon my official retirement, that I realized that, what about my Cantonese culture that I love? And so I just don't know whether you did not also not pay attention to that, because we were just feeling that, well, we're in America, and hey, we got to do standard English. So you're the first professor of English who scolded students. How come it's AP talk, right? We all try to teach our students how to do well in exam. And most Chinese parents, if not 100% of them, just want the kids to do well in AP exam, right? So I thought that was so radical to challenge the standard English. And now I'm challenging the standard Chinese exactly in parallel. I say, how come there's only one Chinese language taught in the entire United States? It's a crime. So I'm also reporting a crime here. I said, how can that be when this language is the language very similar to that of the town poets?
Yes.
It can only rhyme in Cantonese, as your teacher Ouyang told you. He's exactly right. So I just want to say, what a fascinating parallel trajectory. So you may want to say, why do you not want to reclaim that very valuable culture earlier on?
Why I didn't want to reclaim the Cantonese early?
Yeah, so you don't talk so much about, the hay and all that stuff. You even have a whole afterword to talk about why I want to keep some of the words, and the wok hay and the cheng hay, all the wonderful things that you didn't use in the first two books.
Oh, well, this is interesting. In Orphan, there's so much you said, and there's so much that we have talked about privately about the power and the creative, especially the passion in Cantonese. There is a sense of power and emotion in Cantonese that does not exist in other in the sterilized, main language, because that language has been fixed, sterilized,
Just say
castrated.
standard English, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just to quickly give you an example about the class, when just this last class, a young student said she played the guzheng, and then she described the guzheng as like a harp laying down. I said, what the hell is that? Why are you catering to the RC culture, the ruling class culture? Why don't you give the guzheng its glory and describe the ability of the guzheng to those beautiful songs about friendship, the flowing mountain river, that beautiful, beautiful story of a friendship between a woodcutter and a scholar is in that piece. And this talented student was beaten essentially in her English to only describe beautiful Chinese culture, as in comparison as a lower class instrument. It's like an upside down, oh God, why don't you just call it an upside down, harp? So I want to teach students to really look at their own linguistic history, look at their class history, look at their familial history. I want to hear the cadence of their Cantonese or whatever ancestral language they have. And you asked about the first books, and I discovered that there's only one Toisan word that I use in Orphan Bachelors, and that's Han. It's not, it's a very ancient word. It doesn't exist in Cantonese, in Hong Kong Cantonese. And it's in the deathbed scene. And the child May says to my mother who is passing, I Han you. Now, this is completely inappropriate because Han is used in a, generationally, it's from an older person to a young person. But then the mother is dying, and I flipped it. The mother is becoming not a child, but is transforming into another sense. The time is leaving the mother. So the daughter can say, I Han you. And also, Han, it has the breath. If you say, I sick you, it's just too harsh. The K is like, I sick you, I'm going to stab you. It just is harsh, and I needed the sound to be Han. And in bone, I used that word once. And I didn't realize it until I looked back. I used it once. So it is a word, so I think it's the way the writing is. In the last book, it was, my parents had passed, my ability to go into their language and recreate their feeling in the language changed. In Bone, I used it only once. Layla asked the mother after she secretly marries her boyfriend Mason, and she says, what, you don't like Mason? And the mother says, Mason, I Han, and that's the only time I use Han there. So I think I was trusting my instinct as a writer. I was teaching myself, and I was also trusting myself. I didn't plan it. I'm only going to use Han once in Bone and Han once in Orphan Bachelors. No, I didn't realize that until after I finished.
So I will use this occasion, since you talk about guzheng and harp, I would use this occasion to introduce a term that I introduced to all the graduating English seniors because I was the faculty commencement speaker in 2023. The term is 知音 or 基音, and I was very happy that you can even find it in Google, but most people do not know this word. And I said in the commencement that it's also based on my favorite story that is only 1 page long. But the term is so important because there's no English translation. Soulmate just is so antiseptic. I hate the term. I mean, soulmate, and also you're supposed to have only one soulmate. Whereas you can have many jiyam. And I believe Faye and I are very close to our students, as close as to our children or biological children, because we are humanist. We are trained in the humanities, and so we have been able to appreciate, like I was trained, appreciate Homer, Shakespeare, Milton, Maxine Hong Kingston, Fae Myenne Ng, Marilyn Chen, and so on and so on. So if I can be your zhiying, surely I can detect the talents among my students, right?
Yes.
So if you can spot the talents in students, and they are also very devoted to reading my work. And if through my work, they read Fae Myenne Ng and Maxine Hong Kingston, that's what I wanted when I die. In other words, I don't care whether they read my work, but if through my work, they would read the authors I read. And that's why I so regretted not writing a chapter on you. Now I made it up for it. Plenty with a vengeance, actually. Made it up with a
Absolutely.
vengeance. But that's why I just feel that is my highest gratification, is that through readers reading my work, they learn to appreciate you because your work is hard. Marilyn's work is even harder. So I said, if I can make them, hook them into reading that, then they are your zhiying and my zhiying. And when you have people like that, zhiying love is not love that permutation find, because it's so hard to find zhiying.
Yeah.
And then when a student asks me, KK, why do you have so many zhiying? I say, easy answer, by trying to be a zhiying.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's why we are so close, because I really love I can hear you and you can hear me. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of bond that I would encourage all teachers. I know there are plenty of teachers in the audience. I think
Yes.
that's our secret, why
Yes.
we can be beloved of our students, and why, we also love our students. I think it's I also gave a separate talk in China called 知音情. The love of 知音, I think that is the most permanent, most lasting, most solid love that one can
Yes.
ever have in life.
Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and I just wanted to say again how much I love my students and how much I owe them, because the book was really, half of it was teaching scenes, and my editor said, they're fascinating, they're wonderful, but they steal the book. So I had to snip, 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 and just to the student, this Guzheng student, I said, write it again, write that sentence again, and she came an amazing sentence. And I have other students who just show me, that exclusion did not win. They are passionate, they are creative, they are powerfully committed to life, and they have hard lives. Young people have really hard lives. And I am in such admiration for what they face and what they are, they don't back down. And when they come into my class, I look at them and I said, I am going to love you, and then you're going to leave and you're going to do things, okay? And a child, they never leave. But for 16 weeks, you can really give them something, and they, and they take it, and then they make it something else.
Okay, I said I want to leave 20 minutes for the audience to ask questions. So if they have questions, let's answer them first, and then we can keep talking forever. I know you and I can just keep talking forever, but we only have 20 minutes left.
Okay. No questions. Okay, well,
no question. I think there are. There's a hand raised, but I thought yeah, or Emily are trying to fill the questions. I can try to read the question myself. There's a raised hand, but I don't know how to call the raised hand. Panel. Yeah, are you still there to fill questions?
Yes, I am here. We currently do not have any questions, so we would encourage anyone to ask your question. You can speak your question. You can speak directly to Faye and King-Kok, and if you wish to ask your question, not through written. Here we have a Q&A.
Also, you can ask your question in Chinese too. I think there are a lot of Chinese speakers. If you feel more comfortable asking in 普通话, you can do that too.
And I would love to have you give us your name because we're
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
it's like a faceless crowd. Everybody has a name. I tell my students somebody died to give you the name, so say your name. Give us your name so that we have a sense of who you are.
Fantastic. So yes, we have a name. So this is from
Oh,
Ella.
Sean Wong is here.
Sean!
To get a shout out to Sean Wong.
Sean is my big brother.
Thank you for showing up, Sean.
Wonderful. Welcome, John. So I have a question from Ella. Ella says, thank you very much for this conversation. My name is Ella, and I am an undergraduate at UCLA. You mentioned your experiences teaching at Berkeley in your book and today. I was wondering if you have any other thoughts on current Cantonese American youth and their knowledge of and connection to Cantonese American history. How have you seen this Cantonese American identity change over time?
Can I say something about Ella first? She's my current student in my Learn Through Play, Learn Cantonese through Cantonese opera class. And she's a wonderful student. She speaks fluent Cantonese. So we should have let her ask the question in Cantonese. And she's writing a project on Angel Island poetry. So at first I said, no, I don't want to direct any more thesis. But then when she said that, I say, okay, I have to do it. So she's not only just my current student, but I'm actually her supervisor for an undergraduate honor thesis. Yeah. A freshman honor thesis, actually. So the question is for you, Faye.
Oh, I have lost the question.
So Ella's question is, I was wondering if you have any other thoughts on current Cantonese American youth and their knowledge of and connection to Cantonese American history. How have you seen this Cantonese American identity change over time?
Well, maybe I can just shoot right to you and say how wonderful that you are going to write about the Angel Island poems. There it is. Why do we need to talk about youth? Let's talk about you. How did you find these poems, and what what does it mean to you? These men who are interned on the island carved poems onto the barracks. My father was there the last year it was open. And I write about it in the book. So I think the focus should be on you. And I am fascinated and thrilled that you're going to do this. And thank you, KK, for staying on and supervising this. It's terrific.
He is contributing a chapter to my Canto IE.
Oh, chapter, I can't remember which chapter. It was excerpt in Harper's, and it's about my father's time on the island. I don't think there's any poetry in it, but that's an extraordinary mausoleum of art.
Do you have the title of your piece?
It's called it was an excerpt in Harper's, but it's chapter 3, I think, in the book. It's on Angel Island. And the
one about the double exclusion, right? The one that I assigned to the class to read, the one that is about the two doors slamming. That's not the one?
Oh no, that was in 2019. That was essentially the first chapter. In February of 2023, Harper's excerpt, I think it's chapter 3, and it's all about my father's time on Angel Island. And I did a Lit Hub essay about the Titanic, and it also includes the poetry, on Angel Island, and it brings in all the little, exercise books where I learned Chinese poetry. So, maybe this would interest you. I think it's fascinating.
Give me the citation and I'll send it to the class.
Okay,
to
okay.
Ella's class. Yeah.
Okay. I will send it to you. LitHub.
Okay.
Titanic Poet Deportee is what it's called.
Mhm. Another question from hey, it's very not easy for you to get direct access to Fae Ying. You guys should ask as many questions as you want.
So we have Ella here. So if Ella, if you could, if you wanted to respond to Faye.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the conversation was really interesting as someone, I feel like obviously in like elementary, middle school, high school, these stories, like these immigrant stories aren't taught, these ethnic histories in America aren't widely taught. So I think in my last year of high school, before coming to UCLA, I was very interested in finding out more about like things that I haven't heard about in like the curriculum. So I came across the Angel Island poems, and I'm from San Francisco, so the island is obviously very close by in the San Francisco Bay. And I think it's very striking to me, like hearing about it. And then I got to UCLA, and then I recently visited the island. And I think the experience of walking through there is just very interesting, the way it is, set up as a recreation of what it might have looked like back then. I think it's very interesting to consider like what kind of story is being told when things are set up as a museum, how it's being presented to the visitors that are coming in. And, I was talking a lot to the guide the volunteers that work at the park. And also there's a lot of visitors to that park because it's a very nice area. So there's a lot of tourists and people who don't really know the history, but just are visiting. And it's very interesting to, I guess, hear the tours, hear people respond. So I think that was a very, I guess, moving experience for me, which is why I decided to keep going and doing this project. So thank you very much.
So Ella, you speak Cantonese. So in your spoken Cantonese, in your hearing of your parents' generation speak Cantonese, do you hear the poetry? Is it unique to you, the sounds of Cantonese?
Yeah, I think growing up in San Francisco, many of my friends growing up are also Cantonese, but I didn't really think about, being Cantonese specifically, as opposed to just like generally Chinese that much. I think the sounds are very distinct, and in the Learn Through Play class, we discussed how many Cantonese American kids don't feel like they can advance like in their career or in their adult lives using Cantonese versus like Mandarin, which is, widely used in like people's careers, is seen as like a highly sought out skill. So I thought it was similar in that I didn't think Cantonese could be something I used in my academic or professional life. Yeah, so I always thought like I have to learn Mandarin, and I am learning Mandarin now, but I think looking at Cantonese and Mandarin like together has been really helpful. And now like with this project, I'm like realizing that this story and this language is important and should also be included in academic conversations. So yeah, I think the sounds are very unique. And I feel very lucky to have grown up in like my household with my parents speaking Cantonese to me.
Okay, to follow up on that, let me give an advertisement of my class. Okay, so we are trying to raise money to save Cantonese. So Professor Min Zhou is doing that. But I have another agenda, namely, if Cantonese is not taught throughout America as a Chinese language, something like Cantonese opera, if I don't do anything about it, it's going to go the way of dinosaur. So my class is called Learn Through Play as a pun. Play is both because it's fun, but play also referring to Cantonese opera. And so I just want to show you my favorite opera singers, Yam Kim Fai, Bak Su Xin. And I was so thrilled when Fae Myenne mentioned Bak Su Xin in Orphan Bachelors. I said, wow, how did she know about Bak Su Xin? And Kingston, at the end of Woman Warrior, also talk about her crazy grandmother wanting to buy a bed when there's an opera performance so that she won't miss a single show. So, and when I wrote my piece saying that Cantonese opera is beloved of my mother, and by osmosis, I become a fan, but I won't tell any of my siblings because it's seen as like, oh, servant class. No, they go to Cantonese opera, not, elitists, whatever. So it's a secret. So it's a secret that I even eavesdrop Cantonese opera. So this is Yam Kim Fai Bak Su Xin. And I mentioned Ziyam. I want you guys to come up with Ziyam. The other term I learned from Cantonese opera, and it's very important because the gender attraction is not just Ziyam, but 才华, 才华 in Cantonese. There's no English translation for that. It's both talent, accomplishment, scholarship in the humanities. But in the old times, humanities is everything. So it's also science and arts, even though 才华 stresses the humanities as we know it today. But the people with the greatest 才华, like Zhuge Liang in 三国, or in Jin Yong, Wang Yaoshi, they knows everything. They're good at sword. So both fighting and literary arts are all there in terms of 才华. Now, why is it important? Because with these two divas, thanks to the very brilliant script writer, and he's a writer whose name no Americans would know, Tong Dik-sung or Tang Di-sheng, but to me, he is as brilliant as Shakespeare. Not just the lyrics, but then because Shakespeare writes her scripts according to the actors. And I bet Tong Dik-sung has a crush on Bak Su Xin. So every single play, the Bak Su Xin is never the 贤妻良母. It's never the good wife and the sacrificial. She never play a mother, Bak Su Xin, in all the repertoire. But it's always this very haughty princess sometimes. But even when she's poor, she's very picky about. I mean, Yam Kim Fai is the one who is always trying to get her, flirt with her, but not because she's known for beautiful. It's because she is known for her 才华. Okay, so how rare that kind of sexual attraction is in the East and the West, because I don't think there's any traditional Chinese novels that is based on that, except maybe the Peony Pavilion, 牡丹亭, which happened to be Bai Xianyong, Kunqu as a 牡丹亭. And then Cantonese opera, Yam Kim Fai Bak Su Xin also play a 牡丹亭. And that one, the 才华 attraction is very evident. They haven't even met each other. They met in a dream. And with this most famous one called 帝女花, the Bak Su Xin was a princess. So the father was trying to find her husband. She was only 15. She's not interested. But she said, okay, just to humor. So 1 reject, 2 reject, 5, 10 reject. And then finally, one official brought Yam Kim Fai. And then he warned Yam Kim Fai. He said, this princess is so smart, so filled with 才华. When the king need to consult someone, she consults his 15-year-old daughter. Okay, so throughout, her talents is being emphasized. So then they had a fight at the beginning because she said that Bak Su Xin would say to Yam Kim Fai, hey, men do not kneel to. Why do you kneel to me? In other words, are you trying to get rich because I'm a princess? And also, And then Yang Gifei got very upset and he said, okay, women also have 三從四德. Which one goes first? So they started fighting. But later on, she likes him because she's so brash, so Cantonese. In other words, doesn't kowtow to her because she is a princess. And then, yet, before she decided that, okay, this is the guy, there's a poetry demonstration. Okay, there's a wind and rainstorm right now. How do you feel about this rainstorm, which is not lucky, auspicious for a marriage? Can you make a poem of that? And then it's because he said such a great poem, of course, penned by Tong Dixang. Then she passed the test. So I just feel, I want to rescue this Cantonese opera for many reasons, not just because I love the lyrics, love the songs, but the whole gender, the whole 才華 is the most important thing in a lasting love, just like Ji Yang, so it's not just a simple love of one art. It's just the whole thing affecting our gender perception.
Yes.
That's it's very beautiful. Thank you so much, KK, for your presentation on Cantonese opera. We have a couple more questions. We have a question from Faye's student, Alex Paltner. Alex is asking, thank you for hosting this. I'm curious as to whether Professor Faye has more to say about her line she wrote in Orphan Bachelors. The line is, immigration is the supreme sacrifice. What more did generations of Asian Americans and Asian immigrants sacrifice in the process of becoming American? How do we honor these sacrifices? Thank you for your time.
Alex, a brilliant, charismatic Kung Fu master. He would be on Zoom folding his laundry at the gym, but he was always present and knew everything that we were talking about and could answer. And he was like a trickster monkey. So this question is wonderful because it's really your basic question. It's what you're doing in your poetry, in your Kung Fu, in your life. Am I right? Alex, I'm asking you. Can you respond? Alex.
Now he can.
Oh, no. Okay. So what you're asking, and I think you asked a similar question at the Loft Hour. You're asking, what do we owe our parents? What do we owe our forebears? What can we take for ourselves? I think that's what you're asking. That's where, or maybe I can say that's where the line comes from. It's a supreme sacrifice, but it's not the end. So the immigrants come here and they procreate, and it is no simple gift to be given a life. And you know this, right, Alex? You have tremendous responsibility and you have a tremendous gift to give back. And you're asking, how do I do this? How do I marry my own self with my devotion to who has sacrificed for me?
Yes.
It's a huge question. Alex?
Yes. This exactly, razor sharp on the dot.
Know his name. Alex is amazing.
Thank you,
and King-Kok, you talk about if you saw Alex and in the class you had 3-hour seminars and suddenly he would be up and doing a Kung Fu move. He would be great as a Cantonese opera fighter. Can you show yourself, Alex? Can we see you?
Oh, probably not right now, but I'm honored.
We have a video for the audience at this point. I don't know.
Oh yeah, let's see the audience.
Yeah, can you do a view so that we can see everyone?
Yeah, we are two lonely orphan bachelorettes here.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't there anybody else in this world?
Yeah, and I know so many people too. I love to see their faces.
Emily, can you do your magic?
Yeah, I can give it a try right now.
We should have a gallery photo too of everyone. That would be good. So where does Alex teach Kung Fu?
I help out at the UC Martial Arts program, which is at UC Berkeley.
Oh.
I do a little bit of wushu, kung fu, tai chi, as well as taekwondo.
I am team teaching everything with my Tai Chi master, Yun Zhao, and he is going to lead a workshop in Stanford. I need to have your contact. Maybe you would sign up. He is really wonderful. Zhao Yun in Chinese, but Yun Zhao, we call him Master Yun.
Wow, that is amazing. And
so I call team teaching because he's not a faculty at UCLA, so has to be taught under my Fiat Lux seminar, but he's the main teacher. He's teaching everything. I'm just the one standing on the back of the students to check their back posture.
That is very interesting. It's great to meet you.
Yeah.
I think Alex should find a grant and get to LA and attend one of these classes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Alex is also writing something really unique. It's almost like a modern version of a poetic, martial arts graphic novel.
It's true.
Oh, that's wonderful. That would be so fabulous.
I've been working with a couple of my peers to write a kind of like a delusional martial arts, as if we are still in China, we're still on the mainland, and as if we're still living these kind of warrior lives, traveling through mountains, tasting the taste of different flowers that we just don't know, but we have to have the bravery to try. Kind of just like a diluted version of none of the trauma was even there. And we're still living those heroic lives that we've always lived. Anyway, so I won't make it too much about me. I actually was really curious about Professor Fae and your line about sacrifice and how we go about honoring that sort of sacrifice. And perhaps in what ways maybe literature or books themselves can be like children or like a new generation of Asian American, not scholarship, but scholarship, Asian American memory and kind of making a mark in what is America and an American.
I think this is exactly what I hope for the students to leave my class with, this drive and this desire to create their own forms. And Alex came into the class, a comp lit major, 3 different languages, am I right? And many disciplines, and you were resolute to try everything, and you were dedicated as a reader, and as a writer, you explored. And this is exactly what education should do. And I think King-Kok and I want to create classrooms where we let you go. We give you enough, but we don't form you. We ask you to form yourselves. And I insist that you find your way down to LA, because I think this is a wonderful connection for Alex to meet your Sifu and to be part of your class.
Yeah, that would be so wonderful. And also, I want to add to the sacrifice bit. I think I'm also very non-traditional in not believing in parental sacrifice. So what I told my students or my children are both the same thing. I say, you cannot make me happier as a mentor or as a parent by being able to do what you want, be happy and be caring and do something that is good for you, good for the world, right? And not just making money, but anything that you feel fulfilled. I feel that I'm very lucky because my job is something I love to do. I love my students, and that's why I keep teaching, even though I'm retired. I keep like to find more zhiying. So I really do that, and I'm teaching Tai Chi because I love my teacher, Master Yun, because he is teaching Tai Chi not as a sports, but as literally a martial art. So you have to have a verbal memory to memorize all these wonderful mantra. And she said that he usually uses a poem by Fae Myenne Ng, 欲辩已无言. So she said, when you reach to the highest level of Tai Chi, you cannot explain to people why it is so wonderful. Is what my first book said, articulate silence.
Mhm.
You can only feel it inside yourself. So he said, don't just follow my move, feel me. Exactly the way we read literature. Don't just read, don't just analyze. It should be part of your life. And
Yes.
so I believe that the wonderful about studying humanities is that it expands us as human being and a better human being, because we read different literature. We don't focus on one country, one group. If you read everything, you have to be tolerant person.
Yes. And I want to add that Alex comes from great sacrifice, an exceptional, amazing mother, but I know nothing about her except that Alex contains our feeling of sacrifice. And I think that the one thing I can also say is that, this is in all my years of teaching, it's duty and desire. We don't owe our parents or our culture or our language. We owe ourselves. And when you take care of that, then you can pay back tremendously. It's not like in China where, the grandparents owed Confucius and the great-grandparents, or the grandparents owed the Communist Party and the great-grandparents owed Confucius. You owe no one but yourself. And that's harder to stand alone. And Alex knows this because he's a Kung Fu artist. And in class, he said once, like, what's this for? What's our responsibility? So you're in sync with yourself, Alex. Good question. It's your question.
Wonderful.
I wish we could see you. Can we see
know.
Alex?
No.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Professor Faye. That is a really kind of transformative kind of thought to think about. I don't know anyone but myself and what I would have been rendered if all that history that is set, what we're talking about political castration, if that were to not have happened, what kind of legacy and what kind of community and all that I have been denied by way of history, that I owe to myself. I have to create that world which I have been denied. That's really powerful, and I will continue to think on that introspectively. Thank you so much. I will air time for more people, because I know that there are people with fire in their heart to ask more questions. But thank you so much for your time.
Stay in touch, Alex. And Alex wrote a beautiful, complex, rich letter of support. And Alex taught me this means yin and yang. I always thought, why is it like this? And Alex said it's yin and yang.
I noticed that Helen Jia is also here. Helen, do you have anything to?
Oh, Helen.
And Sean, I mean, you guys are very silent, we have, and Gina McKenty, she's the one who do the whole drama and film. Gina is here too. Because it's funny, this group, I think like maybe 40 out of 50 are like PRC professors, but they are just so used to respecting authority, so they're very shy to ask questions, especially the women. So I also want them to break out of the mold. So the first person who asks question is my Cantonese student, right? And then there's Alex. So I just want someone ask the question in Mandarin. Don't be shy. Just because your English is not good, you can ask in Mandarin. I would love to hear your voice. I don't want to perpetuate the stereotype that Asians have to be goody two shoes. We have to listen and not ask questions, and not to disagree. You can disagree with Faye, you can disagree with me, and we love that.
We're Cantonese.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to fight.
So hey, that's the thing. I mean, that's a big difference between Cantonese. We're not so 客气. We are not 客气 people. We are people.
Yeah, I want a heckler.
Speaking of Cantonese in question, Liu Kedong asked, I do not speak Cantonese. What is hang? Is this 喜欢的欢?
No. It's a unique Toy Chinese word. Even I don't know how to write it.
And here's the thing about language. It came from China. It came from pre-communist China, and it survived in America. It doesn't exist. Well, it exists in the rural villages still in China, but this is how language is smuggled out of a changing country and saved. I call the early orphan bachelors the vainglorious generation because they left a country with nothing and they came to a country with less than nothing. And they were so vain about their glory. They said, and that's why they can do Cantonese opera in Chinatown, because they can still party. They can still have a good time. They can eat peanuts and throw the shells on the floor because they're having a good time. So that's a huge difference. The early immigrants came to this country and saved a kind of bravado. And I got this, it clicked for me when I was living in New York, and my Italian friend, Antonella De Muti, who was my translator of Bone, came, and there was a parade, and she, she was like horrified. She said, Mussolini got rid of this. What is this? And I said, this is Italian-American culture. And, it's a new culture. They have maintained Sicilian pre-1940 culture, and it is alive. And it's the same with Cantonese in America. It is alive.
I'm going to call on some PRC students because they're so quiet, and I know they're very brilliant. So, Xiao
sorry,
is not speaking.
KK, Liu asked, what does it mean, love? The word hung.
Han is a very ancient word, and okay, in the text, look at the spelling, Haahn, Han. It's a deathbed scene. It's a word that doesn't exist in Cantonese or in Mandarin. So I revived it in my first book and again in this book, and I use that Toisan word only once at the deathbed. It's a word of breath, of breathing, of loving. The mother is dying. The child, Han, the mother. But this isn't a word that's used correctly in terms of generation, but it is deeply, deeply true. And that is the power of language. And this is my job as a writer, to bring a dead word into the deathbed scene and to give it life. You can't find it in a Mandarin dictionary. It doesn't exist in modern Chinese, but that's the job of a writer, to bring old words, dead words to life, old feelings, forbidden feelings to life. And it's what King-Kok is talking about, Jian. When you find somebody who can understand between languages, beyond generations, between sexes, then you have found somebody who can support you and be kind and help you grow as an artist. Am I right?
Help each other. It's always reciprocal. I think all the 知音 and 才华. You admire someone else 才华, someone else would admire your 才华. So that's so wonderful. That's why, it's a very rich humanist life. I have so many friends, so many people I care about, and so many people who care about me. I think it's from being a teacher, right? And who can spot the talents in students. There are so many people I want to ask. I know Ping Jiafeng is a professor in Taiwan. She translated Wooden Fish Songs by Ruth Ann Lum McCune. And then Nina Ha was one of my first MA student at UCLA. And now she's like in some very high position somewhere. So I really love for them to ask some questions. And then Stacey Ford was my best friend in Hong Kong. Even she's not Chinese, but she's my best friend in Hong Kong. She teaches at Hong Kong U. There's so many people. And Jeannie Chan, I think, works at the APC Asian Pacific Center. So I know all these names, but they are so quiet. And Gina said she doesn't want to speak because she wants to hear from the students. So some student, He Yi, was my Fudan student, and then subsequently got a PhD at Queen's at Canada. So Yi Yi is Cantonese, but she could hardly remember how to speak because in Guangzhou and Guangdong, they don't speak Cantonese at home anymore. Because, I mean, in school, they can only learn Mandarin. So when they go home, just like kids here, they speak English. Unless you live in Monterey Park, then like Ella or in Chinatown, then they're still very fluent, but not people in the West Side, in LA. So please.
And KK, you taught your son Cantonese and Mandarin. That is such a gift. You took him out of his
Yeah, it's my sacrifice and hard work. But that's why I say it's my trick. I learned Cantonese opera, no one taught me. But because my mother loved it, so I also learned through play. You see what I mean? And so when my son was young, I know I want him to know Chinese and Tang poetry, but he hated Chinese school, understandably. Of course, you want to play sports, you want to do it Saturday. So what I do is to brought him up on the Jingyong, the martial fiction series, TV series. So they're very long. They are like 50 episodes, 60 episodes, even 100 episodes. And I bought those series in Hong Kong. So you have two languages, Mandarin and Cantonese. He could watch these things around the clock. So that's why when we go to Hong Kong and China, he can already understand. So that's my trick. So you don't have to sacrifice. You can just do fun things with your kids to teach them. So that's my feeling. I don't feel I sacrificed my son. We were having fun together. It's my escape too from academic, right? To watch these things with him. Where do you see Chinese American culture heading? Helen Jia. Okay, I can answer that. We are the Chinese American culture. You, Helen, your Asian American dreams shape Chinese American culture, shape Asian American culture. I am going to shape UCLA culture by teaching Cantonese. So we use what we can. And we are Cantonese, right? Yes, we can. We can do anything as long as your heart is there. If you do it just because for promotion, for money, then you probably won't succeed. But that's why my chapter on Fae Myenne and another book is called 心心相补. If you have the heart, the other heart would reciprocate, just like 知音, just like 才华. So I think you should decide what you want Chinese American culture to do. We do not have to conform to any people's expectation. We are our expectation. I was not welcome in Asian American studies because I was FOB, but I change it, with my bibliography. I include everyone, even people back in China as Asian American. I said, why is being born in the USA so important? Why English speaking is so important? I know Sean is there. So Sean changes too, right? Sean really grow, I think and Frank Chin, almost 180 degree from saying that English only and all that, then reclaiming from one extreme to the other, reclaiming the Asian heroic tradition. So, but they have such strong impact on American culture. And I'm very indebted to them. Doesn't matter how mean he was to Maxine Hong Kingston, I still feel very indebted to the IE editors. They really come up, they are very Cantonese. Do you realize that? The IE culture is not your traditional Chinese culture. So they're not wrong when they say that we are not Chinese and we are not American. But what they didn't realize is that they're very Cantonese, right? So whether you want to say Cantonese is different from Chinese, I won't say anything. But, it is a very different culture from the traditional Chinese culture. Oh, yeah, Ginny Chan has something to say. We wanted to share an initiative that has recently launched, establishing a Cantonese Heritage Fund at UCLA. Guess who is the instigator? But Min Zhou is very prominent, and so she is in charge of that fund. So please contribute. Anyone, Cantonese people want to.
Cantonese just break all the rules. They break all the laws.
I know.
Control the Cantonese, and they don't have to be nice. They don't have to be neat.
No,
they don't have to have a
no.
clean house.
Yeah.
And what's happened is like my students come in and they're all nice. And I said, well, they want to know how
We
many.
are not model minority. That's the most important thing. I say, where is this model minority coming from? Yeah. Anyone else want to? Stacy, this is being addressed currently by the previous question, but you didn't ask your question. Oh yeah, she did. Stacy loves your book, by the way, my best friend in Hong Kong. I love this conversation. When I taught Orphan Bachelors at Hong Kong U, the students had a great discussion with Ng's admonition to consider the vessel of time in which a story is told. I would love to hear Ng and Cheung talk about the way this time will perhaps shape future stories. Well, maybe I will start with Maxine Hong Kingston's forthcoming poem called Chinese Time. So he said, Li Bai and Du Fu are very lucky because they meet each other in their lifetime. But for us, she didn't, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact words, but she said for poets, they can relate over centuries, that somehow there's this cycle. I really am in sync with that. I don't know how Fae Myenne felt, but I just feel it's so true, I think Milton shaped me to be an Asian American because she's a revolutionary. And Asian American at the time was rebelling against the hegemonic white culture, right? So I think it also shaped me to now reclaim my Canto tradition, which is also not a mainstream culture. But then, I relate to Cantonese opera, and there's even pre. And I just feel that it's the sensibility that it clicked. Then you feel that I even believe in Shakespeare. So the only religion I believe in is that there's a divinity that shapes our ends. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Buddhist, but I do believe that there's a divinity that shapes our ends, and that if you do good, you have good things coming to you. Just you don't have nightmares. I mean, it's almost like I don't have nightmares if you never mean someone well. I mean, it's the good things just keep coming, whether you're religious or not. So there are all these saying that is very good. But the cycle of time, I want Faye to talk about that because that's Stacy's question.
I like this conversation because, time in the Chinese sensibility and well, let's say the Cantonese American sensibility, all you got is time. And, when I wrote that line, The Vessel of Time, and also in the chapter about Vincent Chin, I tried to encapsulate Chinese grammar. There's no time unless there's an event that provides you understanding with the time. He was beaten. It was the event makes the time. And he would have been married. He was beaten. All this kind of extra that you need in English doesn't happen in Chinese, except you consolidate the heart and the moment with the action. And the vessel of time holding a story, this is to explore what it was like to come to a country that was bent on destroying you. It was bent on not giving you any time in terms of immortality. You would not have children, so your time was limited. You would die, and that would be the end. There was no time for you. So how do you tell a story? It has to be contained in one vessel of time. It's very compact. That's kind of how I write because of my early training in Chinese poetry. And also it's a very Cantonese thing. Like you got no time to say more than you have to say. And so there's a condensation and a precision to the way I like to write. I write a lot of crap and then I distill it into a tonic. And that's just because of my witness to how hard my parents worked. Time mattered. How many culottes did my mother sew to get us, a meal? You know, how many voyages did my father travel to pay the rent? And so this is a compression of time and experience. And I tried, you know, part of what I'm trying to understand is how to make that work on the page, because English doesn't work like that. You know, one of the problems in my text is that, well, when did this happen? And the time stamp doesn't work. So as a writer, this is my challenge. We don't need to have a timestamp. We go by the emotional heart stamp. So what pulls you through, the through line, I hate that word, but it is the feeling of the book. It's not the time and the sequence of events. That's a very shorthand way of talking about it. I hope I
And
didn't.
I also connect what you said about time to what you said earlier. You said you are crazy, only Cantonese can do that because you'll be teaching at Berkeley, coming to UCLA, teach at UCLA, and that's we kind of rub each other, just in Chinese they say we just jostle each other, but then we connected very well, right?
I came to your class.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. I also want to tell people what I did today. Normally on Wednesday, I have 2 Zoom Tai Chi class, one between 8 and 9, and the other one 4 and 5. So I excuse myself. I say, please record it. I can't make it 4 and 5 today to my teacher, Yun Zhao. And he said, yeah, he will record it for me. But I did not miss the 8 and 9, but because I bought a new EV, first time, never driven an EV or even hybrid before. I didn't know that I'm supposed to charge it. So I got up at 6 in the morning to find a charger at UCLA because I haven't installed a charger at home. So I was like looking even for half an hour, but I got up at 6 so that I don't miss, I'm not late for my Tai Chi at 8 o'clock Zoom class. And then right after the class, I have to run to the dental school for my dental appointment. And then after that, a colleague that I had not met yet, who is Cantonese. And I didn't even know that I have a colleague who is Cantonese at UCLA in ALC. Her name is, WeChat name is Maizi, but the real name is Mai Hui Jun. Okay, so she actually teaches Tang poetry, and she would have both Cantonese and Mandarin in the poetry. She recorded yourself. I said, give those to me. I'll put it in the website, the new website I'm creating called CA Reverberations at UCLA. So I'm trying to get that. But then I had lunch, and then because I talk forever, it's so nice to. So I was like running home, charged, my car is charged. So I drove home, but it took me a while to find my car because it's in the electric station. So, and then I rushed home, and then I said, where's this link to the thing? As it turned out, I just cut and pasted in my reminder. So that link doesn't come on till quarter to 5, but I was panicking. So that's my life. And then after
This
that, I probably have
energy,
to.
this is exactly like Master
Cantonese,
Monkey.
right?
Yeah, it's exactly, and
Cantonese.
nobody can
We are
stand it. If you're not
crazy.
Cantonese, nobody can stand you. But we Cantonese say, oh well, she's just getting her joke.
Yeah.
This is an American personality trait. And where does it come from? Well, a writer would say, where does this come from? Where did Master Monkey, this chaotic kind of like, it's a real energy field.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get some PRC Chinese tolerant of this. But
But that's why I'm also not afraid to die. I just feel I'm so lucky. I have lived much longer than kids who are just sleeping like 20 hours, whereas, every hour is just, I do so much,
Yes.
And I use the Michelle Yeoh's Oscar winning, right? We do everything everywhere all at once.
Yes.
So I have friends in China, I have friends in Japan, I have friends in the Philippines. And I don't want to say, oh, I'm busy, I can't talk to you. Anyone who want to talk to me, I'll talk. But I say, try to cut it in 5 minutes, and then we talk for 2 hours probably. So you have to protect me by not using my time. Just I cannot say no to Ella, right? She asked me to direct a thesis. I said, no, I don't have time to read anymore. I don't have time to write letters of recommendation. But what I did write her a letter of recommendation. So it's just think we can't say no, because when things that are like 知音 click, I can say no to anyone who invite me because they think that they are, I don't know. I mean, for a reason, thinking that, oh, I want some money, I want to, or give me an honorarium. I say, please don't. My time is so precious. You only invite me because your students love to hear from me. I don't need to. Don't invite me to an empty room if there's no students there. No matter how much you pay me, I don't want to waste my time, right?
So, King-Kok, read the first line of your memoir that starts, I'm a typhoon baby, because that's
okay. I have to say that. I forgot the first line, but I say I was conceived in a typhoon because I was the sixth youngest in the family, and my parents start with 2 daughters, and that's why they keep reproducing, and now they have 2 sons. Perfect. They were going to end there, but both my fifth sister and me were typhoon babies, and supposed to be. My mom said that very understandably, please abort. And my dad was and now I have to thank patriarchy, right? Because my dad saved my life. Instead of giving her abortion, she just put vitamin. My mom didn't know, but the tummy keep getting bigger. So I was a born 8.5 pounder. My sister before me was only 5 pounds. So I was a really fat baby, but not healthy. But who forced me to write this thing? Memoir of the Typhoon Baby, Fae Myenne Ng. She said, I want to read a memoir of the typhoon baby. So it will be published. It's called The Humanist. And I kind of almost want to it translated before I publish it, because it's something, I won't say a word of wisdom, but it's my tribute to humanities. I really feel that it's the best way to raise a good human being. I say there is a reason why Faye and I both are so fond of our students, because I would say every single MA thesis, honor thesis I directed, the author can stand on a human pedestal and a humanist pedestal. So I feel that now so many world leaders are so awful because they don't read. Obama reads. I like Obama, even though I wrote Hamlet in Obama. That's why he's indecisive. He get trampled on because, just like Shakespeare say, a good politician is not a good person. Sometimes you have to public and private virtue, right? So yeah. So I think humanity could save us if we are not going into the apocalypse. I think so that's why I do spend time on this piece that is inspired by Faye. It's an essay called The Human is the Humans. And the subtitle, A Renaissance Renegade Reads Fae Myenne Ng's Orphan Bachelors. So it's fully acknowledged in the title of the piece. Okay, any last, I think our time is up, right? Is it?
Yeah, this is an amazing conversation. I would love to continue. I think the last one is He Jianfei from University of Washington. Jianfei writes, this is not a question, but I want to say thank you to Fae Myenne. I wrote my first graduate seminar paper on your first novel, Bone, several years ago when I started my PhD program in English. I even taught this novel in my undergraduate composition class, and my students loved it too. I still remember the passage on the San Francisco Chinatown old-timers in that novel. I'm thrilled to hear about your new book about those bachelors under a cruel state exclusion act. It is such an important history that we cannot afford to forget, especially at our present moment. I cannot wait to read Orphan Bachelors.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I wish that we could go on and on much longer, but I gotta go and eat dinner.
Yeah, very late for you, right? Yes.
So
8:30 p.m.
yes, my most sincere grateful is to both of you. It's such an honor to be a fly on the wall in this conversation. This has been recorded, so we'll send out recordings to all the participants. And we do encourage that if you have more questions, please do send it to us, and we will and then share it with Faye and with King-Kok. Thank you both so much.
I
And
just want to really thank
yeah.
It's always been so wonderful working with her. And welcome, Emily. You're with a very wonderful organization. It's your nice family. I'm so proud to be part of that too. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we want
not so much.
amicable exchange. That's my goal. Not allegiance to any nation, but I want the flow, to keep the flowing, East-West, China, US. I don't care who is the president, who is the government. I want to keep the flow. Never say this is bad, that is good, but the two minds are better than one. So you need both. You meet the Chinese and the American, and the mix of any ethnic groups is always good. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
This is the
all
Tai
so
Chi
much.
salute.
Thank you.